from my actual trading. So, okay, Twitch. Guys, I went live on Twitch. Guys, where? Just trying to pull up my stream summary. Hold on. Okay. Thanks, Brendan. Okay, remember what I was saying earlier, how because we had kind of like that, there are the flips on like the actual session lows, obviously they're right at session, are linked to 10 a.m. So my thoughts were, because they hit highs at 9:56, 9:57 a.m., technically we could maybe have a 3 to 4 minute window, okay? Post 1:15. 1:15 being our mid session, okay? So calculated times right here at 3:18, 3:17 p.m. Or sorry, not 3:18, 1:18 p.m. This makes sense based off high of day and session lows for a retest here of 71.44. Can someone document this, please? This is that exact 3 to 4 minute interval I was talking about. So this right here, I noticed that there was a 3-4 minute interval off session highs, session lows. Live on Twitch. And I figured that we could likely see something similar. So I would consider, even though the actual session, mid-session is 1:15, today it's actually 1:18. Does that make sense? Due to morning highs and session lows. So I would say that condition was met. They at least tested 71.44, but I don't like that they didn't close above. And you can see like that direct volatility. They did at least take it above 7143 this time, because I noticed that back in here they couldn't close over there. I don't remember what our continued cycles were, but I'm pretty sure most of them were kind of late, closer to like 148, 156, 208. Pretty sure we had a window right here, but I didn't mark it. And then the rest of these were very, very late in the session, closer to like 3. Why did it delete them? 256, I think, was it? Right? Yes. 301, 309, 312, 331, and then the rest were super late. But where did those median time frames go? How come it deleted them? That's annoying. Hold on. Make sure I'm not missing anything. 254. Oh, 254. 155 and 316. Do I have 316 marked? Yes. So it's 255 or 54? 54 and 155. I do have 155. Okay. So do you guys see that immediate reduction stick that follows? They tend to keep doing things like this when, unfortunately, they want to stall, especially if it's like right at a very calculated point in time, because otherwise that could have tried coming back, retesting 4.5, 4.7, and specifically if they cleared 4.4, kind of like here, which would have given it odds of basically retesting today's open. It deleted today's opening range too, which was 4.8, right? Where was today's opening range? Okay. So you can see just how they made this kind of like a sideways type of day. Guys, if you're not listening on Twitch, you're gonna get disconnected on here because I only turn this on so that it can at least record my notes for me. But if you're tuned in and you just like the sound on Discord better, that's fine. But I'm not okay with like a bunch of people tuning in on here and not on there because it doesn't make any sense for me to stream at that point. Especially in real time. After hours, I don't care. Like, notice on Sunday streams, weekend streams, late, I don't really care. But real time, if I'm taking away from my own trading and positions, then it only makes sense to stream on Twitch. But if you're on both, then that's fine too. Yeah, because it doesn't make sense. Like, if like 40 of you guys are watching me on Discord, what the hell is the point in that? Thanks, guys. There's not that many people tuned in on there right now. But you shouldn't get ads if you sub with your Prime. Or I'll gift it to you, Noble Mom, if you want. The only issue with Twitch is I think you have to resub every single month, unfortunately. And this has been really calculated today, guys. So I don't know if you guys read the notes on Substack. I know it's quite a lot, but so far everything's gone according to plan for overnight session. This was our 71.22 retest here, 71.32 stall. You can kind of see how they held our 71.10. 71.44.48 was the highest odd for opening range today, which is exactly where they took us to. We had some stalls stalling at 71.58.59. Idea for today is if they can hold 71.20s and digest the channel properly. So this beige box is supposed to be the most boring area, basically, to kind of just stay stuck, which is exactly what they did. It's unfortunate, but it's actually progressive for price action. Then that's what'll give us any odds of coming back to retest 5.2, 5.8, 6.1. These ranges in here are going to be our max ranges for today in the event that they can clear us. Otherwise, they could just keep this sideways, you guys, and keep us digesting in these ranges here, which isn't the worst case scenario, but it just kind of delays us into tomorrow. And it technically can increase risk just based on the fact that we could re-trigger that 70, 80, 7100 area overnight again. Thank you so much for subbing. So typically 115 is the mid-session for the actual session, okay? From like session open to session close, this is the median time range. But something I did today was notice when we hit right here, so in correlation to session lows, which was exactly when the session opened at 6 p.m., I noticed that when looking at those time intervals, obviously 10 a.m. would be the common flip, like on a 2-hour, 3-hour, 96-minute. Do you see what I'm saying? We triggered highs at 9:56, 9:57 a.m. So I figured they could maybe do the same thing, okay, where if they don't clear maybe at 1:15, they could try testing our 71.44, 71.43, this area here. Maybe 3 to 4 minutes after that 15-minute mark, like the 1:15 mark. So right in here. And that's exactly what they did. Had they done this a bit earlier, I think that would have been better for odds in terms of clearing. So for instance, if they broke 4 minutes ahead of 1:15, like closer to like 1:11, 1:12, they likely would have continued. But we don't really have very, very high odds today of clearing the channel super early, especially considering the odds for the week. Do you think that this was progressive price action though, in the sense that they at least tested 71.44 by mid-session? I know it doesn't really do anything for price, but and the windows are very delayed. Like if they stall at this point in time, which they're doing so far, this is what can continue delaying a break out of this channel, which is like this beige box, all the way through to like basically 3 o'clock, right? And then the latest odds we have are after the close, unfortunately. Okay, they're after 4. So how important do you think this period is here, specifically between 1:15, 1:18, and just after 2 o'clock for premium basis? If you're trading same day expirations, let's say off 71.20s. This is where we went long off 71.22. That was the idea, is to hold core. So this is these areas here, these green spots. Okay, these are lower core ranges. They stalled mid core ranges. We want to see if they can get it back to here, but that's going to take some work, obviously. So very dumbed down way of looking at this is honestly if you stall right here again, but then you come back beneath 3.8 and 3.6, you're likely just going to keep delaying, and it's probably going to do the same thing. The only issue is this point in time, you might be at risk of retesting beneath 3.1, 3.2, which if you do, that's what puts 71.22 back at risk. Which could be something they do if they don't clear this just before or just after 2, because that's quite a long time from now, from here until like 2:55, 3 o'clock. If you think about it, that's at least an hour and a half, 2 hours till, yeah, 2 hours, an hour and a half. That's quite a long time to basically be stuck. So these, I would say these next 20-30 minutes are pretty vital. I wasn't going to stream this afternoon after streaming this morning just because I don't like channel days like this. Like, they're very, very boring, and it's a lot of talking for nothing, so I would rather wait for another day. On another note though, we had some other swing trades. Poet, these were all ones that I did off the scan, and I did that crypto scan last Saturday. I think it was April 11th, which, by the way, I'll post it on Substack tonight for whoever didn't join that. But this was one of the trades off that 738 clearance to this 922. They were buying specifically April 24th and May 1st strike. So, and today they started buying leaps for January. For, what did we say it was, you guys, for January leaps? January, let me just double check. January leaps. Oh, $10, $12 leaps for January, which I found interesting. And then another name that came up on the scan with crypto, like for this break back here, was some of the older EV names like Plug. And this one was specifically May 1st, I think I said, that they were buying. Where is it? Hold on. No, May 8th, sorry. May 8th, and that was the 250 calls, because they were picking these up back in here. Okay, do you see that off the 268, 275? So the idea was, is if they can sustain above this area here, this is where they were accumulating, this is where they could clear. And 250, they're pretty in the money. They were extremely inexpensive too, if you think about it, because they were the 250 strike for May 8th, okay, when it was trading at the money for 40, I think they were 44 cents or something like that. They were pretty inexpensive. So, and the idea was to clear it to 316, 321. Something I noticed too in terms of range on this one. Let me just set some alerts on this though, just in case they, hold on. I'll set both sides. I don't know if they're gonna clear either or right now, but it's important to watch the 324422 mark. Okay, so back to plug. This one here. You see how, okay, this is when they started buying, okay? You see here how they kind of, it was like a 6 cents breach beneath that 275. Do you guys see that? Yes, everyone sees that? Okay. I figured that they would likely stall almost the same on the upside. So our target was that 316 area. Okay. Do you see this? So based on range theory, technically this is still within this means. So a 0.6 breach makes sense that they likely weren't going to trigger 316 right away. Eddie, you might want to watch this or write this down. I don't know if you're trading this, because you're the only one that mentioned it earlier. Based on today's session, it's closer to like 313. Okay, so in the event that they come back and retest highs, I think that's technically enough to be considered like a viable range for the session today. And so far, this is quite perfect range. If they can clear 316, 321, 322, that's where this could really extend. Okay, all the way to like that 350, 360 range. I'm not sure if this has the momentum to do it all today, but they weren't looking for expirations until month end and into May. This one here stalled at 922, so I should probably set an alert on this one too. Idea was if they can hold above 835, 850, it could come back and try retesting. So this one was also extremely inexpensive for the contracts. They were buying April 17th, April 24th, and May 1st on this one. I did the April 24th on this one because it just made a bit more sense. But technically speaking, you could have also done the May 1st. And they did a really good job sustaining this box range in here. 738 was the area that I mentioned as the clearance break, along with 760. They kind of stalled 760 here. ES, I think we should likely look at the range reduction from our mid sessions here, just to get an idea of how much range they're actually reducing this by, because I can already tell that. So this would have been the first target had they cleared 4448 back to the means at like 7151, 52, 53. So you can already see that they're doing everything they can to basically burn premiums this afternoon on the index. Oil had a decent move. We did look at repositioning into some oil plays on Friday. I didn't do much though on the oil hedge, just because I think Solo's the only one that took that, but and maybe Booth. I think Booth might have taken that too. But I was essentially looking to see if they would basically position just a little bit. So this was, I would say this is more of a short-term hedge back to our 148, 149, 150. These were our initial targets before the breaks to 170 on XOM. Okay, like back in here, especially when they kind of stalled this range in here. I don't know if I have my, I don't know where my CL chart is. I'll have to find that. This isn't it. I'll have to go back and find the CL chart, but kind of the same idea. On XOM, I wanted to basically see if they'd hold close to this 142. See how they stalled 152.88, 152.91? These were our calculated 21 point intervals, I'm pretty sure, on XOM that we did way back before it ever cleared highs, like back down in here off 120, off 110, 112. So this isn't, it's a good area, but without them clearing this, then they're likely not going to get that second leg up. This is going to be a huge indication, by the way. If oil fails these ranges in here, so like let's say XOM fails our previous long ranges of 147 to 152, that's a huge leading indication that ES will continue to retest highs. Okay? Which makes sense because it would be inverse. Because really any news that comes out in terms of like geopolitical risk is going to impact what sector? I'm just going to set this on here too, just in case. Which sector would be at risk in the event that there was geopolitical risk? You should be watching this. As you should be watching this, if we come back and start clearing back over 428 on the 10-year, USD CAD is still seeing a downturn, so this could help actually. Nobody knows? Well, if you guys don't know that, then you probably shouldn't be day trading. Crude. I feel like you don't even have to be a trader to know that. Like, oil. Okay? Oil is going to be heavily impacted if there was any signs of any sort of political risk coming up, okay? And if there were any like ceasefire agreements or it rejected 88, okay, that's a good sign too. We can kind of keep watching for that. But and you could maybe even overlay the index against crude and you could essentially see. Okay. And you can see the divergence between the two. It's pretty obvious. And you see how they're kind of intertwining right here? Yeah, exactly. It's almost kind of making this memeable. Basically. Crypto we can cover later. I have that drafted, I just wanted to add a few more things. So you see what they're doing here? That's exactly what we were just talking about. If they stall 4-4, they'll likely retest 3-6, 3-8. Once they start failing this range in here, though, I think that's where risk will start to increase, specifically if they bring it back beneath 3-6 and retest 3-2, 3-3. And that's likely what's going to keep prolonging this and keeping us sideways. Kind of like this. Okay, there's two things they could do, if depending on time. So if they were to do something like this and backtest closer to like the 149 period, then they have a probability of trying to bring it back above the channel and keep it channel bound for the retest around 2, okay? Versus if they stall right here and then take it, let's say they take out 3132, then they have probably a higher likelihood of pushing back and retesting this range in here. The sideways scenario would be very tight holds around 3638, but then we really want to try retesting 44 by that 48.55 window. Does that make sense? So this would be the best case scenario for our odds, because then at least we have somewhat of a probability of retesting 71.49 and 71.51 by that 2 o'clock period. I know this is very boring price action, but let's do our first poll. 70 highest odds by, let's say, the 2 p.m. window. It's not exactly 2 p.m., but 71.44 retest, 71.33 hold, 71.32 failure, 71.22 retest. I'll set that for 5 minutes. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to put my vote in. Don't copy me. This is a calculated time, it's not a flip, so whereas if it was a flip, you'd want to see the push around 4.8, but 4.8 is a generic flip for the market anyway. I think we said, oh, it is a flip too. 48 was a flip and it was a calculated point, right? That was the point that had confluence, I think I said. Yeah, it is. This. I'm going to copy paste it here. And that was essentially based on this condition being met. I don't remember. I think 155 was a flip. It wasn't a calculated time. 208 I think was calculated. I thought I made them different color shades so I would know the difference, but let me go back. Yes, okay. These were, so those were flips, these were calculated times, okay? So I'll mark the flips in white. Technically 148 is a dual, so it's a flip and it's a calculated range. 208 was also a calculated time. Oops. So this would be the window, basically. Like between here and, I guess technically here. I said 2, but it's technically 208. 2 is the flip on the structure. So because this is aligned with session lows are right at session open. So okay, for like the 6 a.m. window or 6 p.m. window, this is aligned with 2 o'clock. Does that make sense? This is what I think could put us at some risk, you guys, this afternoon, because this is a potential 3-bar reversal down that could play out. So that's another reason why I think that this period is very important. Mind you, we could stay stuck on some of these wider frames, like for instance, the 3-hour kind of conflicts with the 2-hour, 4-hour, since this one could stay stuck till 3. So this is a really good way of looking at this from a structural perspective, whereas like the 4-hour flips at 2 and doesn't really look like it imposes as much risk as the 2-hour. Does that make sense? Because your 2-hour is what could make like a bear flag down, okay? Like this. From now until basically end of session, which I don't think would be the case. With what conditions? What conditions do you think would have to be met before 2 o'clock to avoid this from happening? Oh wow, that's a lot more interesting than this. I feel like finance is, it's fun, but it's very boring sometimes too. So based on structures, guys, we'll obviously watch the 2 o'clock period, but so what would the conditions have to be? What did you guys vote for? 71.33 hold. Okay, so majority of you think that we won't test 71.44 and that instead we'll back test 71.33 by that 2 p.m. 208 window. So I figured because of structural risk on much wider time frames, like the, for instance, that 2-hour, 4-hour, 3-hour, so on and so forth for 2 o'clock, to mitigate that risk, what would they have to do? I guess I have to start picking on people again. Arun. Hi, I haven't seen you in a long time. What would you have to do to avoid risk by 2 p.m.? Or avoid that 2-hour structure potentially from forming or happening? There's actually 2 things that you could do, but what's the more obvious thing that you would have to do? All right, we're gonna move on to what would you have to do to basically avoid that? Yeah, 2 things. The most simple thing would be obviously to retest 71.43, 71.44, right? Secondary thing would be what? Sometimes you have to go lower, right, to avoid going any lower and to go back higher. So another scenario that you could have is you would probably want to retest these lows to maybe make more of like a star type reversal, which is like back to 71.20 or something like that. Okay, that scenario doesn't seem too likely, because you have to kind of look at it as which has higher odds based on how much time in relevance to range. So from range perspective, you're only about 2.75 to 3 points away based on this price point right here. Whereas over here, that's like a full 22 points. Do you get what I'm saying? In specific to, oops, to here. That's the 22, 23 point interval that we were talking about. That would require some news probably. Yeah. Well, we'd want to ideally hold 32. That's the idea, but this is more in terms of structure than it is price, I guess. Because technically you could still take out 71.21, hold 71.20, and it would still be okay, because it's still within those core ratios. Does that make sense? Whereas if you make a higher low, maybe around like 71.22, 24, then that would probably increase your odds of staying stuck inside until 3 o'clock. Does that make sense? Because then you'd have like your 3 hour that's stuck inside. So I don't think either of those scenarios are as probable, to be honest, in comparison to testing 7144, but based on the fact that we tested at 1:17 p.m. and 1:18, but it's good to know what your scenarios are, okay? Yeah, it is a bit stronger than ES. Okay, does that make sense? I'll just copy paste this here again, but that's what I just said. But to me, it made more sense that they'll likely try testing this area first. The calculated time is 2:08, okay? So technically, even if they didn't do it at this time, it's still okay. But based on the 2, 3 hour, 4 hour structures, it would be in our favor if they did actually test here before 2, okay? That would be in our best interest. I'm just glad that we saw this coming. That's where reductions tick off that 155. 155 was the flip on I set all the applicable frames that are correlated to session open. Which are these here. I don't remember exactly which one it was that was. It might have been the 144 minute. Let me just double check. No, that was the 112. That was also 112. This is linked to 224. Oh, that could have been off the 957 stall this morning, actually. Off highs. Let me double check. This is 1251, 28. Oh, 218 I forgot to mark. 218. This is 48. 21. 6. Yeah, it was right off highs. That's the 155. So this is a pretty important time frame to watch, I think, today. Okay? Because this runs until session close. Well, in the event that they don't break this back. The 218, 224 are linked to high of day. Okay. Maybe I'll make these green. So was this, that 155 reduction stick was also linked to high of day. So in theory, you could assume that they're trying to avoid coming back to retest that, and it makes total sense because look at where they're stalling. Like these reductions would have given us the retest of 4344, which is obviously what you need to get back there anyway. This is partially why I didn't really want to stream this afternoon, because I figured that if they don't clear here at mid-session, then they likely can keep this stuck, and they could keep this stuck literally all day if they wanted to. This was the secondary window. This would be basically the cutoff. Otherwise, all of these are basically after 4 o'clock into session close. Which basically just keeps us sideways. I think the range off of our 3.6 and 3.8 right now is probably similar. Based on where they're stalling. It's probably close. You could maybe just use that 4.75 that we were using earlier. Okay. Close to here. I mean, I guess it depends on how much you're willing to risk. I'm not really one to gamble. Well, it would also depend on which type of account you're trading and what kind of instrument I guess you're trading too. Yeah. This would be the neutralized. This is where I would say risk begins to increase, and then again, this is probably where if they were to take this back to 71.21, that they could see that increase in volatility. So 159 closing at 71.37.75. Something I noticed here is that closing price was actually identical to, where's the mid-session? Where did it go? Like just ahead of like 114. 115 was here. Where's 1245? Here. Okay, do you notice this, guys? Look at real-time mid-session. Look at the closing price there. Do you notice something similar here with the 159 close? What is it that they're doing here? And it's pretty obvious what they're doing. They're keeping this extremely sideways. Basically what they're doing is they're stalling just beneath 3.8, okay? Closing beneath there, still testing 4.448, so it keeps slight odds alive, okay? Sustaining 3.132, and then obviously just above that 20, 21, 22 mark. But this is what keeps you very sideways in terms of price action. Does that make sense? Because 3.7 it's still above 3.3, 3.2, but it's not quite high enough. I would say that you'd have to close at least over 3.8. Okay, and they did the exact same thing at mid-session and again here just before 2 o'clock. Their only benefit is during the session's mid-session, which is like the 114 and this 118 period. They did close a bit higher, but these odds in here, they're more aligned to what point in the day? What point in the day are these odds here more aligned to? after the close, right? So how often have they been giving us breaks after the bell recently? Yes. Sadly. It's been almost an everyday thing, but from a time and price perspective today, that would actually make sense if they did do something like that. At what point in the day would they really have to break range for that to be avoided? So this period here is the only period that's giving us somewhat of odds, okay? In relevance to our high of day and our low of session, okay? This is directly correlated to session close, okay? Is everyone on the same page? For any sort of structural breaks to occur in real time, okay, you'd probably want to break max by like that median range of time, okay, between the period of like 1:15, 1:17, 1:18 p.m. until session, real-time session closes, which is basically 2.5 hours from now. So the median of 240 minutes, or 2 hours and 40 minutes, would be an 80 bar span. So likely around that 238, 239 period, okay? This period here. Do we normally have volatility around 2:30, 2:36, 2:38 p.m.? Yes, okay. What period in the day could they try resetting this from, let's say from here until close? And I'm specifically measuring off my 71.21 hold, okay? That's a calculated SPA. Otherwise, I don't care that that's the low of the day. I care that that's the actual low for my ranges, okay? So 293 would be like 140. Six-minute interval or so, so probably like right around here, from the points in time that they actually started to break back range. Right here, I don't know if you guys can see that, kind of like right off here. This is likely the point in time that you'd want to sustain structure by, okay? And specific to the session close, I think we still have some time. 353 was 176, which would be right about now, okay? 176.5 minutes is a calculated interval from these lows, okay? So there's some calculated flips here that could really help us avoid staying stuck during the real-time session. It's about 176.5, okay? So that would land right around that 205, 208 window. We already had odds at 208 anyway, so this could help us in terms of trying to come back and break range. And this is the only way that we could avoid basically staying stuck in real time today. Does that make sense? From a time perspective, in terms of both price and time. So I'm just gonna double check one thing too. Hold on. Can someone write that down so I don't go back and forget it? These were the earlier odds, which they clearly got stuck. Off session, it's closer to like 424 minute intervals, which is 212 minutes. So that would have been around this period here, okay? Off these highs. They're not really as great of odds, but this is what could keep that window extended to that 236, 238 bar, okay? So what, 236, 235, and then this was 205. And the 208. If you watch this too, this is pretty cool because this occurred on a 30-second interval. Do you see how when they flipped 30 seconds, that's when it came back and broke this 71.38 mark right here? Because there's actually a half-minute interval. So it has higher odds of breaking into the last 30 seconds versus like the first 30 seconds on that break. My period of time was around 208, so at least they're trading this back above 71.38, 71.39. This at least gives you somewhat of an odd of getting a retest closer to that 2. I thought we had an odd at 212. I don't know why this thing, every time I go back and reset, it keeps deleting things. 212. What was 212 linked to? Do you guys remember? 29 minute and 33 are linked to highs. That's the 18, 21. $87, I'm pretty sure wasn't until, yeah, 18. 56. No. I think that could have been the median between the 21, 24 for like the actual session. I don't remember. I'm just gonna double check though, hold on. These are off the actual session lows, but I just want to see something. They're mostly 224, but I could have sworn there was a range around 212. Just don't remember what it was. Oh, anyway, maybe I'm wrong. The 224 is a multi-flip. This is linked to high of day, by the way. These green bars are linked to the high of day. So I think clearing back over 3.8 at these calculated times, like these times here, could really help those odds. Are calculated times usually your highest odds of retesting highs? This is a trick question, by the way. That's a huge reduction stick. Some volatility coming in, guys, especially ahead of this 218, 224 period, so just be cautious. Sorry, Fluffy, at this point I don't even know what you're asking about. Yes, for real-time highs. Which are the high of day? Because highs occurred in real time. Yeah, it was off real-time highs. That 205, you mean? Well, that's why I turned on the mic, the scripty thing, so at least it records. Because just in case I don't write it down and someone else doesn't write it down, at least the bot will. So... yes, it was 176 interval. The session close 176. I don't know, that's what it says in here. So I don't remember exactly. 176. It was 176 and a half. So it's like, I think from there till like basically end of session or like session close. Something like this. Between that 205, 204 to 208 window. Sorry, this should be 176. Hopefully that makes sense. Until the 5 p.m. close. Or I guess you could think of it as like 6 p.m. open. Yeah, they are digesting it, unfortunately, but that was the idea for today. So I guess we can't be upset because this really helps our odds for the 21st, 22nd, and potentially the 24th. All right, let's do one more poll here since you can clearly see some slight volatility sticks. Okay, earlier majority voted that they would come back to 71.33 or 71.44. Both were wrong because they didn't do either or. So they didn't go back to 3.3 and they didn't take out 4.4. So let's say by the 2:18, 2:24 p.m. period, these times of day are aligned to highs. Okay, clear 7144, back test 7138. I feel like that's probably it. I don't really think that there are many options here. I probably should have put that out earlier. If you guys want to vote on that. And these calculated times here were based on the actual session. Okay, let's get some votes in, you guys, on that. So 224 is the most common flip here, but there are some odds at 218. When it's a flip, do you want it to happen before or during? Don't get this wrong. And no one answered the question I sent earlier either. Are calculated times your highest odds of retesting highs? That's a trick question. I've asked it before and everyone got it wrong, so I'm asking it again to see if you guys actually can pick up on that this time. No, they're not. Remove that thumbs up. Take it off now. No, it's not. Those are calculated intervals in terms of price, okay? So it's not necessarily an odd of taking out your high. It's basically a period of time that's trying to decipher between your session open, session close, session highs, session lows, okay? Yes, it could take you back essentially to your highs, but there has to be some sort of overlap or confluence around that specific time with a flip. Does that make sense, you guys? So, and that technically can give you like the odds of resetting, right? You can reset your open, you can reset your lows, that's what those intervals are supposed to be for. Okay, second question, when you're testing at the time of a flip, do you want to test before or during? What time right now do we need a break at? Right here, before. Okay, so what time do you want to see a good stick? 2:17 p.m. before that candle closes here. 71.43.25 being retested off that 2:17 p.m. stick. There's a few flips at 2:18 that are linked to today's highs. 2:24 had the better odds, but I like that there's a little window here of roughly 5 to 6 minutes because it not only gives us an odd of taking out 71.44 and testing it, but it gives us an odd of what? What can this help us have an odd of doing? Considering we have a 4-minute window here, or 6-minute window here. Yeah, I don't really know if I would say expand given this kind of market dynamic today, but at least clear and continuation, I guess, at least to 4.7, 4.8 or something. Yeah, like at least gives you some odds of getting some sort of breaks back to like 4.7, 4.8. And at this point in the day, this is important because what was 71.48? And you're obviously not going to get any breaks until you finally start coming back above here. 218 getting that break of 714375. Still no clearance over 44 though. We'll see if they can take it out here. So these points here are also aligned back to session highs. Do you guys see that? 7.5. There's some slight volatility here. The only reason why this is okay is because we have the box range between 218 and 224. Okay? 7144 being retested here. This time preferably, I want to see if they can at least try getting a 4.6, 4.7, ideally 4.8 retest, just so that they can give us some sort of odds of keeping this like not stuck in an inside range until after 3, because then otherwise our odds are going to really begin to reduce. Even if that means consolidating beneath 6.1 and 5.8, but like above 3.8 and 4.4. Like that'll at least give us somewhat of progressive price action for the next hour, okay? Can someone document that stick here? So I want to ideally see if they can break some range here by like 222, 223. 71.46.75 is what I'm looking for, and 71.4825. This was the area I calculated earlier this morning. What did the majority vote for during this time? So this is still a little bit more progressive than these periods were, but are we still stuck in a channel? Which is really what can keep us consolidating basically all day today. We also opened in the channel, so odds of that happening were quite high. What would you have to break above in order for this to have the highest odds, I guess, of not staying stuck in the channel between, let's say, 2:30 and 3:30? These were the times earlier, but these were the calculated times earlier, right? 2:35, 2:36, 2:37. I don't know why it got deleted again. I'm pretty sure these were them. What do you guys think? Which price point would we have to be trading above to, I would say ideally before 3, in order for this to avoid staying stuck that last hour and give us higher odds of being at least in the means? Which price point do you think we'd have to be trading at? This was the cutoff period, so it seemed like if they can do it as early as here, then our odds of retesting highs in real time are heavily increased, okay? 71, 50, 1, 223, testing that 714675 spot that I was talking about earlier. This is where I have my alert set. This is a pretty calculated price point. I wanted to basically see if they can test here. Then we have a decent odd, you guys, of retesting our opening range off this 224 period here. Okay, in the event that they do that, I think it does open up our window a tiny bit for getting some breaks back to 71.51, 52. I think just getting it out of the channel for the last hour and a half of the day is what's going to give us the best odds of getting the 71.51 or 58.59 retest in real time. And any odds of getting to 71.66, 64, 68. Otherwise, I feel like if they keep this stuck all the way until here in the channel, then probably not. At the very least, maybe you could retest 5859, but I highly doubt that you could get core ranges if you're still stuck in the channel between the entire period of 230 and 330. Does that make sense? I feel like you'd have to have some sort of like progressive price action. So let's see. This is the odd that I had for this structure break right here. So far it's stalling. They stalled it by 0.25. We'll see if there's any follow through almost immediately on the 2.5 stick. How important is immediate follow through if you stall by, like, let's say 0.25, 0.5? In this case, they're stalling by 0.25. Yeah, usually you need at least immediate follow through, usually within like the first minute or two, otherwise the volatility can start to increase, which you can already kind of see happening here. $2.30, $2.32 are pretty generic times of day every session, but I didn't really have too much confluence there. Do you see the volatility increasing here, you guys, on that 0.25 stall? And it could be likely because if they would have cleared, they could have broken this out of the channel as early as this period here. 3.25 would probably have been a channel break. Yeah, it is. I'm going to still watch the median points between 224 and 236. Did anyone write down why the 236, 237 were calculated? I think I might have sent them in here though. Hold on. Yeah, I did. What's this right here? That was the median range in time between the first test of 71.44 at 1:18 mid-session and 4 p.m. close. So what could this point in the day do then? If this is, I'll just copy paste here again. If that's the interval between our mid-session and our real-time close, okay, so that 118 is not linked to real-time close. That's linked to session close, okay? What could that help do for real-time? Specific to this period here. That could aid in resetting Oh, Mexi's here. I feel like Mexi would be a great person to ask. Mexi, what would that do if 2:37 p.m. Breaks range? And that's linked to 118, 119 mid-session candles, which are linked to the 5 p.m. session close. But that point in time is directly correlated to 4 p.m. close, okay? So that could keep your odds in play for real time. What would that have to get back to at that specific time of day for your odds to be reset? Otherwise, the delayed breaks all the way through to like 3:30, potentially until after real-time hours, is highly increased. These were the median points in time between 224 and 237.36, so I just kind of wanted to see just how much range they would potentially reduce by, break by. So far, that's a reduction stick at 230. I guess I'm gonna have to ask someone else. It's a pretty easy answer. What are we trading below or beneath? Which happens to align really nicely today with the top of the channel. Okay, what are we trading beneath right now? This is a really good session to get practice in, you guys, because the market's moving slow. Obviously, we can't do this every day, so. And you can already see from 224 onwards, when they stalled 4675, 47, 48, you can see the very evident reduction in range. What are we trading beneath, you guys? We're trading beneath opening range, right? OR. We're still beneath OR. We're still beneath the top of the channel. We're still technically beneath 4948. So, and this is exactly what they're doing. Like all these small breaks, do you see how they're preventing this from getting back to 61, 51, 52, or 71, 51, sorry, 52, 53. Yeah, it is a frustrating range, but this is what needs to happen for us to get continuation this week. So, okay, so what do you have to do by the 236, 237 window? I would say if they don't do this, then I would say 1,000% that they're keeping this stuck for an hour. Okay? What do you think you'd have to do during this period? Because these next odds are pretty late, like all the way through till 2:55, 3 o'clock, 3:01, 3:09. Okay? What would you have to do at the very, very, very least? Give me a minimum condition and give me your ideal condition. Yeah, that's true. Well, my style of trading though is pretty advanced. Like I don't think most people trade like this, specifically in terms of like time and stuff, and trying to align exact time and price. But this is a really good session to like study because the market's moving slow enough that we can actually look at every single minute. Brendan, you're the only form of hope in here right now, and Fluffy. What price point do we have to be at by 236, 237 at a minimum, you think? Just to at least give us an odd of resetting this. So probably close to here. No, that's too high. That's ideal. What's your minimum? That, Noble Mom, you're on the right track. Like, yes, I would say 44, 46. Okay, you don't necessarily need 48 by this point in time here, okay, to get an odd of breaking 46, 48, but you do need to be at least above these minimal ranges of 43, 4375, 44. Do you get what I'm saying? Because even though they met them here, they weren't really quite above 44, okay? Does that make sense? Like, look at this candle at 21 and 18. Did they close above 44? No. They did get above 4375, okay? The 2-3 candle, no breaks above 47 or 4675. So there's like basically like a 0.25 reduction. And the higher odds were 236, 237. Okay, in correlation to this. This basically can reset this period that we had here. Does that make sense? Because we do have an extended period at 248 and 255, 254 that we talked about. So you're not wrong. It just kind of gives you an extension to basically 3 o'clock. Like that's the easiest way to look at it. It's not exactly 3, but does that make sense? Otherwise, yes, your odds get very, very, very high that you're likely going to stay stuck this afternoon. So far, they're stalling 4375 here at 36. And I would imagine volatility increasing here. There's some volatility coming in with some volume, guys, off that 236. It is a mid-range stick. Let me just pull up my news feed. Hold on. I don't think we've seen anything in the last few minutes other than that last tweet, which was this. This was like a few minutes ago. I could also be off by a minute or two too, because I manually calculated these, but I figured it was 236.37. So, I mean, we could maybe watch for that minute of volatility. I would expect some form of volatility here, though, especially off like a 4-4 stall. Okay. There's also some numbers that just came out. Sandbeck, thank you. I might end the stream, guys. The 2:37 stall. I don't want to be sitting here until 4 o'clock and then not get any sort of movement. Sorry. Okay, I think I'm gonna end the stream. I might come back maybe for the last half hour if we get some breaks here, but this is basically how I pictured this session working out today. And as you guys know, we're not going to see any constructive breaks until they get us back above here, okay, or back beneath 3322. So, and that being said, like any sell-offs into the close would be back to our 70.99, 71.06, 71.10. Any breaks above 5.8, 5.9 would be to 6.1, 6.4, 6.6. I figure that they'll probably keep this stuck in the channel today. Unless any sort of traction breaks, which doesn't really look like that's going to be the case, unfortunately. I want to take a look at the 2 hour though. Just because we did have... Okay, this is good because they basically tried to negate the probability of a bear flag forming by slightly taking out that 4-4 high. So that's good, but so at least risk is somewhat reduced, but that doesn't mean that we're still not stuck in these inside ranges on a 4 hour, 3 hour that basically run until close. The only next window that opens up potentially is around that 248, 255, I think it was 301 and 309 window. Okay, everything else otherwise is implying that they would keep this potentially range bound this afternoon, unless they want to save this until end of session today to reset Friday's close like I had mentioned earlier this morning. If they wanted to do something like that, then that would be the only case possible where they could push things into the final minutes of the session close. And we could maybe apply the same logic with high of day, you know, that 3-4 minute interval. Maybe if they did something a few minutes before the 4 p.m. close, so like 3:54, 55, 56, which would entail for a very, very, very late day move today. Okay, I'm gonna take a bit of a break. It's our first nice day out literally all year. It's like plus 21 outside or something like that, and we had 30 centimeters of snow last week, so I think I'm gonna sit outside maybe on my laptop or something since this is pretty slow, and then if I decide I want to do an end of day stream, I'll let you guys know, but I don't think I'm going to.